All this is Dr. Mobeen Sayed from drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. So today is the smart cookie talk day. You are the smart cookie, I'm the talker. The thing is that there is so much news out there and so much of the fear mongering out there that I thought it is important to catch up on the news. So let's get caught up and then we'll go back to our regular talks as we do on other days. So let's start. I hope you're doing well. This is drbeen.com. There is a link in the description, and drbeen.com 1000 lectures at a price that you would not forget. And that is one time only as well. It's not a repeating price. So with this, let me just close this couple of softwares. Okay, so with this, let's start. First discussion. Vaccine and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, they actually had a committee meeting today that I did not stay on live for. Maybe we can do it tomorrow. But today's committee meeting was for Moderna vaccine for 6 years through 17 years of age. Tomorrow's vaccination meeting is for children, both Moderna and Pfizer, children 6 months through 5 years of age. So there is something in their documentation, which is here, that made me really upset. And I would tell you upfront, you are a pro-vaccine person or you're an anti-vaccine person. I am not going to sit here and push some agenda. I'm just going to look at this data and fast because we have a lot of news to cover. But something that I'm trying to keep my words softer. Something that really made me upset was the following thing. In this stack that you're seeing, there is a place where they talk about hospitalization of the children. And they talk about 50% of the children hospitalized have comorbidities. However, when they talk about mortality, unfortunate, sad part that some of us die as well because of COVID. There are some children that die as well. So when they talk about mortality, they totally skip the comorbidities and that children who died sadly and how many of them had the comorbidities. They totally skip it. You cannot find that data. And that makes me mad because for me to do the decision making will be to say, number one, what is the risk level of the infection? What does it mean when the patient is hospitalized? How risky is that? And then how many people, how many children, how many patients died? And what was the role of comorbidities in there? And that data is missing. And this is a trend that is going on for the whole year, that this data that can connect these dots is always missing. And I hate it. And the second thing that is that made me really upset was that in this stack, at one point, I would show to you, they discuss how when children are infected or because of children's infection, the parents have to disengage from their jobs to take care of the children. And that causes a toll, that causes an issue, which is understandable, financial issues, stress, emotional stress, and so on. Which tells me that FDA, CDC, these authorities are aware that when somebody is not at work, they can be in severe financial distress, which they're using here as a case. However, what made me really upset is that people who were fired because of mandates, they were also parents. They also had livelihood. They also got financial troubles. I never see any slide to say because of this following number of families were disrupted. Did they not have children who got disrupted? So anyways, that just, and with this rant of mine, you might start thinking I'm upset about the vaccine. I am not upset about the vaccine. Vaccine or not vaccine is a decision that is yours. These vaccines, in my opinion, have shown less efficacy against Omicron. So we have to think more deeply. And so we'll see what they say tomorrow. I have my vaccines. However, this seems so blatant manipulation that it makes me mad. It seems unethical to me that some professional would do this. So sorry to start off with this anger, but I want to show you some things here. So 6 months, 4 years, they would decide. 5 to 11, 12 to 17 are eligible. I'm going to go fast because there are tons of slides here. This is their slide to say that, hey, in the Omicron time, this is this spike. This is the Omicron time. And currently we are here, 7 days, moving average, 109,000 cases. And we know that cases are really not being counted correctly anymore because the virus is actually not that, whatever way you call it, not that intense, not that severe, lethal, or overall protection is better. And I would show you one more news that in the US, the seroprevalence being the antibodies presence in people, either because of infection and recovery or because of the vaccination, 94% of the society has antibodies. So of course there is some protection. So anyways, these are the number of cases. Then they talk about here, if you see, this is the cases. Again, I do not feel cases is a great number to look at. And we'll have to have Paul Borg to help us understand this once more. By the way, Paul would be with us on this Thursday. So here is some data for the cases. I'm going to skip over those. This is an interesting data here. This is seroprevalence of infection-induced SARS-CoV-2 antibodies among all ages. This is infection-induced, not vaccine-induced, infection-induced. And here, if you see 1 to 4 years of age, their seroprevalence, let's see if I can make it a little bigger. Here, their seroprevalence is 68%. And then 5 to 11 years of age, 77%, and 12 to 17 is 74%. That is the antibodies present. I want to keep going fast on this one. This is the hospitalization. So check this out now. COVID-19 associated hospitalizations among children and adolescent 6 months to 17 years. These are the folks that they're actually working with at this time for these two. So 6 months to 4 year, here is the red line. 5 to 11 years are the blue lines. And this is March 22 to March 2020 to March 2022. So here is where we are with the hospitalization. I want to still move forward and show you this one. So this is rates of monthly COVID-19 associated hospitalizations by vaccination status among children and adolescent. So if you see here, look at the extreme right where the graph is actually on the lower side. Over here, the dotted line is adolescent age 12 to 17 who are unvaccinated. So that rate seems to be, about, they would have been great if they had some grid lines for people to actually make sense of it. But they are just, anyways, about, it seems like 5, 6 per 100,000. And those adolescent 12 to 17 years of age who are vaccinated, they seem to be about 3 or 4 per 100,000. And if you look at children 5 to 11 years of age, unvaccinated, 3 per 100,000, and vaccinated maybe 1.5 or 2 per 100,000. That is the rate of hospitalization. Then this is an important slide to look at. Look, they're saying over here, 6 months to 4 years of age. This is the first row I'm reading, this row. 6 months to 4 years of age, 49% of these children who were hospitalized had comorbidities. So half of the patients who were hospitalized had comorbidities. That also means that half of the patients that went to hospital did not have comorbidities, were healthy children. And so, of course, that is a serious thing. The question is, what was the outcome? That mortality part is actually missing. 5 to 11 years old, 67% of the hospitalized patients had the underlying conditions. 12 to 17, 68% had underlying conditions. And this may be an interesting time to look at the numbers as well. So here I have CDC data that shows over the period, this is up till June 4, up till June 4, 5 to 17 year. And by the way, all of these links are in the description. 5 to 17 years old, 4,722 total cases. If you go for, meaning hospitalizations. If you go to 0 to 4 years, 3,971 total hospitalizations. If then we say 50% of them had comorbidities, then that means about 1,500, about not 1,500, 1,900-ish had comorbidities. If we look at 5 to 17, there are 4,712, about 5,000, so about 2,500 or actually more, because that number was 68% and 67%. So higher number had comorbidities. So it would have been great to understand two things: long COVID in patients with comorbidities and in patients without, and that data is missing. Mortality in patients with comorbidities and without. That would have been a great factor for parents to make a decision. And that data is missing. You cannot imagine, I was pulling my hair looking around to see if I can find that data. Anyways, this is another slide here: severity of COVID-19 associated hospitalizations. Severity of hospitalization. So if somebody is in the hospital, then are they in ICU, or are they on high flow nasal cannula or BiPAP, CPAP, or ventilator, or died? So here, if you see children 6 months to 4 years of age, 535 is the count given December 19, 2021. So 21's end. So this is about 3 months data. So it's not the data of 4,000, 5,000 that we saw. This is 3 months data. So in this 3 months, 535 children, 6 months to 4 years, were hospitalized. I'm assuming, given the previous data, that 50% of them had comorbidities. And here is their breakdown of various stages within the hospital. If you look at the mortality, 6 months to 4 years mortality, red line, in hospital death is 0. 5 to 11 years, the number was 260. Again, this 3 months only we're talking about, this Omicron time only, and 3 months. 5 to 11 years, 260 children in the hospital, and mortality is 0. 12 to 17 years, these were 256 patients and 0.9%. So almost 1 per 100. So 2.5, 2.4. But this data in absolute numbers is not here. And this data with comorbidities is not here. So then they go over various hospitalization percentages. They compare hospitalization to before the pandemic. They compare hospitalization to flu and the hospitalization because of flu, and so on. So it's a decent data set. The question is that the important decision-making factor is actually missing from this data set. So it almost seems like, to me, they're just trying to be more salesy, convincing. Hey, we need to provide you all this data to look at. Well, the basic data is missing. So anyways, this is an interesting slide. In here, they're talking about children who had taken other vaccines and how did that help those children in the future. So, for example, very interesting, hepatitis A. This is the hospitalizations per year before the vaccine was recommended. 5 to 14 years of age, hepatitis A vaccination started in 2005. Before then, lesser than one child would become hospitalized. Similarly, after that, hopefully, what I think they're saying is no more. Chickenpox, 0 to 4 years of age, 1993 to 95, 29 to 42 hospitalized. So it's an interesting data point to see how vaccine can actually help in the vaccinated. Now, COVID-19 associated mortality, and watch out that there will be no comorbidity data here. So here they're talking about children 6 months to 4 years, 202 COVID-19 deaths. This is January 1, 2020 to May 11, 2022 to May 11. So remember, we just saw the mortality data above. That was from December to March, and that data had no mortality. Here, this is January 1 to May 11, and this data has mortality. So what I do not know is if that 3 months of December, January, February, March didn't have mortality, then is it April and May 2 months, and then January 1, 2020 till December 2021, which is almost 2 years? Where was this number coming from? That is not clear. They just said, here is the number. So children 6 months to 4 years, 202 COVID-19 deaths, 1.7% of all deaths in this age group. So all deaths that occur, unfortunately, for other reasons as well in this age group, out of them, 1.7% had COVID. So once again, if you are looking at it and you can make better sense of it, here is what they're saying. Look at this. They're saying deaths in children and adolescent by age based on death certificate date. And this is January 1, 2020 till May 11, 2022. So the whole year of 2020, whole year of 2021, and up till May, 5 months of 2022. In there, they're saying 202 deaths. If I go back to this data over here, this data, severity of COVID-19 associated hospitalization among children and adolescents 6 months to 17 years of age. This is December 19, 2021 to March 31, 2022. So almost 3 months and 10 days. And here, other than mortality in 12 to 17 years of age, which is about 2 or 2.5 children, unfortunate, sad, there is zero mortality in the rest. So you can see how the numbers are kind of not as clear, although they have lots of slides here. Now, continuing, this is COVID-19 deaths in children and adolescent by age based on death certificate data, National Center for Health sets. This is January 1, 2020 to May 11. Now, this is 5 to 11 years of age. 189 deaths, which is a total of 2.5% of all deaths in this age group. So again, what was the comorbidity? What was the variant? Is it happening now in Omicron time as well? Or that data is just not there, or at least is not here. COVID-19 deaths in children and adolescent by age based on death certificate data. So this is again 2020 to 11. This is 12 to 17 years and 443 deaths and 2.4%. This is just such a sad thing to discuss. Rank, I'm going to just skip over this. This is then they talk about multi-system inflammatory disease. So if a patient gets COVID-19, a child, they could get multi-system inflammation. And you know that adults get that as well. But this is the children's data. So that data is here. Then this is the long COVID. So once again, UK survey appears to be less common in children than in adults. A national survey in the UK found 7 to 8% of children with COVID 19 reported continued symptoms more than 12 weeks in. Can appear after mild to severe infections. Most common symptoms similar to adults and include fatigue, headache, insomnia, trouble concentrating, muscle and joint pains, and cough. Impact on quality of life, I think we are now all aware. Limitations of physical activity, feeling distress, even inability to work for children, study. Then they talk about the school, and here, percent of parents who say in the past year they or another adult in their household left a job or changed work schedule to take care of their children. This is what I was saying. They are so observant that they have data about children becoming sick, and because of that, parents having to leave a job, and that is as distress for the family. I never saw this kind of a chart coming from these administrations to talk about those who were let go because of the mandates. They also had families and they also had livelihood. And we collectively as a society never looked back and said, what have we done to these folks? Anyways, at least there is some data here for them. And so percent of parents who say in the past year they or another adult in their household, so more data here. So this is the discussion. Their conclusion is, as of June 7, 2022, COVID-19 has caused 13.1 million cases among children and adolescents aged 0 to 17. Now, as far as I remember, I think there are 80 million or about 80 million population of this age group. Omicron surge led to the highest number of COVID-19 cases, emergency department visits, and hospitalization rates seen during this pandemic. Omicron, and I'll show you one more thing, that almost all folks who talk about current number of cases and the sky is about to fall because we'll have more cases, more infections, reinfections, immunity is evading, including here, they always miss telling this second part of the statement to say what is the actual impact of it. Hospitalizations, deaths, are they the same as before? That part is always missed because that kind of ruins their fear mongering. Then they say children and adolescents are at risk of severe illness from COVID-19. More than half of hospitalized children ages 6 months to 4 years had no underlying conditions. So 50% had underlying conditions, 50% were healthy, and that is serious. I wish they added a statement to say, and those who unfortunately died, this was their state. And they just never put that here. During Omicron predominance, COVID-19 associated hospitalizations among children aged 6 months to 4 years have similar or increased severity compared to older children. Burden of COVID-19 hospitalization is similar to or exceeds that of other pediatric vaccine preventable diseases. So this is their discussion. I'm going to close this one. Where is it? I'm going to close this one. And this is the data. Again, the links are in the description. You can go to this data. If you're a parent, you want to see about your child, you can see various parameters here. On the left side, this is a column where you can decide the age group you want to see. And then on the right side, there is the hospitalization and other data. If you scroll down, there is actually more data types as well. Anyway, so this is another chart. This is a chart as I showed you before, I believe on its bottom there. Yeah, so there are more data types here as well, which is good. So this is the vaccine discussion. If you like, tomorrow they're going to talk about children 6 months to 4 years, and we can do a live as we did before. Now I want to go to the next topic. Doug says, okay, so we have 384 people right now on. which is a slightly lesser number, but I'm still very grateful. Can you all hit like on this one? So that would give me 384 likes. And if you hit subscribe as well, that becomes even better. Um, Doug says, I used to hoard tabs. So, Doug, I had to open up all of these things so I can quickly go through them. Um, Alexander Cotter says, how much RAM has Dr. Bean's computer? So many browser tabs. So, I think I have 64 GB. Because I do live relay and I have these tabs open and I have drawing board open, I try to have better RAM in it. Although nowadays this computer is kind of becoming a little iffy as well. But still, here we are. So, Roller Girl, hello. So, one more concerning thing. This is a very long article. The link is in the description. Again, we are doing a smart cookie talk today. And the point is that can we quickly catch up on so many topics so that we can go back towards the regular talks? Because I had them all slated to be discussed, but one topic a day would never have covered it. I have actually a question for you as well. And that is, would you have been okay if 2 minutes per topic, I would have come on live, done 2 minutes, stopped, and moved on? I would not have waited for everyone to join. I just did these 5 or 10 talks and be done. Would that have been better, or this is better? And I promise you, this time I'm going to put the chapter markers afterwards on the video. Okay, this one, pandemic babies or COVID-19 generation are behind after years of stress, isolation, affected brain development. So these are those babies who either were born during pandemic and stayed isolated during this time, or born just before it and spent majority of their early time in the pandemic. These children, I think you can see what is coming next. These children do not have those social developments that they get when they are interacting with others, family members, other family members, friends of the parents, going out in the shopping malls and observing and learning, some of them going to schools and so on. So, because of that, children behavior of this generation is different. And I read a little, this was a very long topic, a long article. For example, on other measures, CJ is a child, is struggling. She lacks a sense of personal boundaries and often clings to those around her. She doesn't talk a lot and sometimes need to be dragged into her new preschool. When she's uncomfortable or upset, she screams at a pitch that pierces the ears. She doesn't know how to work through her emotions. Emerging evidence reveals an uptick in developmental delays and challenging behaviors in children belonging to the COVID-19 COVID generation. Born during or shortly before the pandemic, many of these children are talking, walking, and interacting later and less frequently. They're more prone to certain behaviors such as outbursts, physical aggression, and separation anxiety. I think even adults, people are on edge. And soon after the pandemic or near the end of pandemic, this is not helping that stock markets are crashing and economy is not looking great. People have started actually taking more debt. This is just like when we become sick, we try to do exercises and we try to do normal thing to tell us that, hey, I'm okay. Similarly, as the economy is becoming more and more stressful, people are spending more just to make themselves feel that I am okay, things are fine. And in that process, they're taking more loan. Plus, many people actually don't have enough funds to do their daily activities. So children are going through the stresses with their adults. In many cases, the adult in their lives have suffered unrelenting and unprecedented levels of emotional or financial stress. Stress pandemic babies have absorbed when their brains are developing at a faster rate than at any other point in human experience. And if you keep going, pandemic babies are slow to talk and walk, and there is a lots of discussion here. So I would request, if there are parents here, to read this article to understand some of the behaviors so that you can have more empathy towards the child and figure out how to help them instead of becoming upset. I'm sure you don't, but still, this would help clarify some of the child's behaviors. Now, going to continue. This is COVID reinfections set to spike in US as new variants evade immunity. And I am sure that you're hearing this news all the time. There are doctors and experts whose total job is to churn out continuous fear about the variants and immune escape. And so I read this all. This is also a longer article. If I open up, the story continues. So this is also a longer article, but there was one sentence in this whole article, which was the important one. And that was, here. I think when I highlight it and it becomes collapsed, then the highlight goes away. Here is the one sentence. So whole, I think about 1,500 words long article, and it says, the good news is, here just in one area, the good news is that overall, COVID is less deadly now than ever before. Despite elevated case levels, there are now fewer US COVID patients in intensive care units than at any previous point in the pandemic, and the national death rate, about 300 per day, is as low as it has ever been. Acquired immunity, multiple rounds of vaccination, improved treatment options. There can be many, many factors, including the virus itself being less. But then the article before and article after continues to talk about BA4 is here and BA5 are here, and more mutations are occurring, and they are immune escaping mutations, and they're going to really cause problem. We'll see. However, please, when you read some articles or when you listen to folks, see if they are adding this statement for you or not. Because if they're not adding, then they're fear mongering. And if you don't believe it, then go to some site where the cases and the hospitalizations are. Go to our world in data, or what is that? Let's say our world in data, United States, or Worldometer. And if you see here, again, cases is not a very reliable number. If I go to the daily hospitalizations, I can find so confirmed deaths. And once again, look at the peaks here. For example, this is January 13, 2021, last year's beginning, 3,386. This is January or February 2022, this year's beginning, 2,603. And at this time, we are hovering at 392. Again, every single death is a tragedy. It's a destruction of a family. But this is not to be used to fearmonger for the variants. So when you watch such news or listen to such folks, then do me a favor, at least go and look at this data so that you could balance it out to understand what is actually going on, or request Paul Bork's time to give us some more data on this one. So back here. So this was new reinfection. So please, as much as reinfection is a word, reinfection is a mechanism, reinfection is possible, please keep your view balanced. We'll know if it becomes bad. So that's that news. Then trends in number of COVID-19 cases. So different discussion now. trends in number of COVID-19 cases and deaths in the US reported by CDC. So this is also similar data as I showed you with the our world in data. This is CDC. So once again, if you see, we have trended down from, this is 7-day moving average on February 1. The number was 2,703 deaths, 7 days. And at this time, we are at 276 deaths. Again, it's a moving average. This link is in the description as well. So as much as we can be upset, we can be scared, I hope not, that there are more variants. We should just be cautious. We have learned a lot in 2.5 years. But we should also be able to look at this data. This data, we have learned how to look at them. At least the cool beans here, we have done it together. So if now we get somebody to play us this way, including as you saw with the CDC data. Okay, so this is the other part now. So as there is BA4 coming in and BA5, this is CDC's tracker. And if I can try to enlarge the size here in the latest days, so this is started from 4:30. So 4:30, almost end of the April, beginning of May. So May, June, and we are halfway in June. So really 45, 46 days. In these 46 days, 46, 7 days, BA4 and 5 have gone from almost negligible. What was the number? Okay, I can't see that number. It takes time. So anyways, from a negligible number to, at the moment, today, it is BA4 is, if I click on this one, this graph is just all over the place. So BA5 is 13.3% and BA4 is 8.3. So collectively, BA4 and 5 are 8 plus 13, about 21, 22%. So that is the ground they have gained in 45 days. And the BA2, this red one, it still stays to be the bigger number, 64%. It was before then, it was taking over from BA1. So it was actually increasing in number from a smaller percentage. And now it has challenge from BA4 and 5. So we'll see how BA4 and 5 do. But at the same time, we should keep an eye on hospitalizations and deaths. Cases are, for me at least, not interesting. So this is another link in the description. We have a lot more to cover. Do you want to continue or should we stop? Or do you want me to do one more talk? So Denise says, I've heard BA5 is resistant to most everything and is much worse. The question is, where is that data yet? So if it is just news, it is every kind of message is circulating in the news. We'll look at the data. If you say, I can look at that. So Catherine Parker says, Dr. Bean, what is your response to people that say it is rare, only 1.2% are vaccine injured, and that is not a lot of people compared to how many have been vaccinated? So billions of doses given, agreed that vaccine injury is rare. But let me tell you my experience to see how rare it may be. Within my family of 4 people, 1 person has it. My niece and their family, they are 4 as well. My niece, her brother, actually they're 5, a younger brother and parents, 1 person in there. Yesterday, my friend came in. Yesterday? Yes, yesterday. Yesterday, my friend came to visit me in the evening. He's my best friend. I don't want to disclose him. So he's my best friend. He came to visit me, and he's my age. And when he was sitting here next to me, and I was showing him some things, whenever he will move, he will he will do this like this. So I said, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And he said, "I don't know. He's a boxer." And he said, "Last year I used to go to gym and box and exercise, and now I cannot move my muscles. I cannot walk correctly. I cannot move." He actually then, when he was leaving, he showed me that he could not put on his shoes. So what he was doing was, he was my age. He was more athletic than I am. He was a boxer at the age of 18, and he had national color in boxing. So he's much more fit than I am. And he was holding his foot and pulling it up with one hand to then put it on with the other hand. He could not bring his leg up. And I said, "So you went to the doctor?" He said, "Yes." I said, "When did this start?" He said, "I had the vaccines at this time." He did not know it is something to do with the vaccine. I asked him. So he said, "I had the vaccines on this day, and then I started having this problem. I went to the doctor. They did all kinds of tests. They said everything is clear. We do not know what's happening." So neither did the doctor know, nor did he know. Then the third case for me, this morning I spoke with someone. I think total 3 family members. One of them got injured to the point that they closed down their practice. Doctor, this is just in my vicinity. So rare that my family has one, my niece's family has one, my best friend, 2 people, husband and wife, they have one. Actually, he has a daughter and a stepson as well. So uh, out of those 4, they 2 of them live together. So out of those, one, and then this 3 people's one. So first, I don't think it is that rare. So we should get away from this continuous mantra of saying it is rare to ignore it. Second, even if it is rare, let's say out of 221 million people, let's say 1 million, let's say 1,000 became injured. What would these folks recommend? Leave them suffering, dying, pulling for their life, committing suicides? Because, oh well, they were the sacrificial lambs for the rest of us. I got vaccine as well. So this is not an anti-vaccine rant. My problem has always been, fine, if it is rare, then have those people, be kind to them. Lesser is actually easier to manage then. Let's say you only have 1,000 people. These companies have earned billions of dollars. They should put a fund together to say, these 1,000 people, we will take care of everything. Government could say this. We have created a special insurance system for you guys. We'll take care of it. You are rare. You're only 1,000. These patients are having to pull their life together. They cannot even think correctly and plan correctly because of the injury. They still have to go and figure out which doctor to go to, what to tell them, which studies to share with the doctor to educate the doctor, then to fight with the insurance company to say, please allow coverage for this, or they are doing out of pocket. This is how we would behave. If it is rare, this should even be an easier opportunity for us to say, this is nothing. We can take care of all of you at a very, very low cost because you're just rare. So they say it is rare. I would say it as well, that, yeah, this is rare. But people say it is rare to dismiss them or to silence those who talk about it. And that is, in my opinion, cruel. Okay, so back to the discussion. Updated US infection and vaccine induced SARS-CoV-2 seroprevalance. So this is a very interesting study. What this study is, what is the seroprevalence in the society? So the antibodies against SARS-CoV-2, either because of the infection or because of the vaccination. What is that level? So I thought this was a very interesting one. So first I want to read this part. Let's see if I can make it bigger. It has become too big. These sites are funny when I zoom them in. So here, all demographic groups had a combined, and demographic here, including vaccinated or infection and seroprevalence, or vaccine and seroprevalence. All demographic groups had a combined seroprevalence of 92.9% or more. This is a very interesting number. Then they say, there are others. Higher vaccination rates correlated with a smaller increase in infection-induced seroprevalence. So they were able to see if the antibodies present in the blood of a person were because of the infection or the vaccine. And the reason is that they can see antibodies against N protein, which is only present in the virus and not in the vaccine. And so if somebody has antibodies against N, then or anti-N antibodies, then they can say that this person was infected and that is why they have the antibodies. And if they only have anti-spike and no anti-N, then they were vaccinated and have the antibodies. So this is actually understandable that in a cluster where there are more vaccinated people, there will be less infection. And in a cluster or area where there are less vaccinated people, there will be more infection. So they saw this difference in seroprevalence and antibody type as well. So if I can read this quick part here. Between July 2020 and December 2021, among 2.4 million included specimens. So these were the blood donors, people who had donated the blood and then they took those specimens. 1.2 million, about 1.2, 50.3% were donated by women, 2.03 million, 84.5% by non-Hispanic white donors, 12.2% by people aged 16 to 29 years of age, 21.3% of those aged 65 and older, 87.3% by those who had donated previously. From May through December 2021, the infection-induced seroprevalence increased from 20% to 28.8%. So infections caused another 8.8%, 8.6%. And the combined seroprevalence, infection-induced and vaccine-induced, were from 83.3 to 94.7. And so you can see the rest of the data as well. For me, the takeaway line, about 92.9% is the seroprevalence, at least in the US. That's a good number. So I'm going to continue moving forward. So rapid scalable assessment of SARS-CoV-2 cellular immunity by whole blood PCR. I loved this test. And I saw Texas Meg had linked it in the Discord, and someone else separately sent it to me as well. So thanks to both of you. Here is what they did. This is actually a really cool test. We know that there is a T-cell T-detect test, correct? And that test is that they take a person's blood and then they see if the T cells are present that will react to SARS-CoV-2 antigen. And if these will, then that would tell us that the patient had infection in the past. That test, if you read this article over here, that test has its own limitations, plus the process is quite involved and so on. So these researchers have created a new set of tests that is actually easier. What did they do? Here is what they did. So let me see if I can hand wave and discuss it. So here is what they did. It's so much fun. I like medical concepts. So they take a person's blood. In that blood, there are T cells that are running around, which may be memory T cells against SARS-CoV-2. Then what they do is they expose these cells to the spike protein. So they don't try to tear down those cells and see what is the kind of RNA in there and what is happening. They just simply expose them to the spike protein. And now they also are not saying that if they bind to the spike protein, we have T cells, or if they don't. Instead, they expose them and then they observe them. And what happens is these cute little cells, when exposed to spike protein, they become active because they would bind. If there are T cells present against the spike protein, then they would attach with the spike protein and they'll become active. When they'll become active, they release interferon gamma. And we know that T helper cells can release interferon gamma when they become active. When they release interferon gamma, they activate the monocytes, which are also present in the blood. And monocytes in response release CXCL10, another chemical substance. So what they did was they would take the patient's blood, they'll expose it to the spike protein, and then they would just within 24 hours measure the amount of interferon gamma produced and CXCL10. And they'll do PCR amplification on the mRNA for interferon gamma. And from there, they can tell you if you had the infection. This is much more accurate plus easier test than the T-Detect. This, according to the authors. So I thought this was pretty funny. So let me quickly show you some of their graphs here. So here they take the blood and then they put the spike proteins on it. And after that, they expose them. So if you see here, this is the CXCL10 coming from monocytes, and this is the CXCL10 from vaccinated. Here is the convalescent person and others, interferon gamma. So I believe interferon gamma is the black one over here. So these are the two chemical substances they can measure. I love it. This is a beautiful test. I'm hoping that this test becomes available soon, and that would also be a little more precise towards, did you have an infection? So that is done. So we have 550 folks. Hit the like button and subscribe button. Okay, so next one. Trends in acute hepatitis of unspecified etiology. I liked this one. I'll tell you the basic summary of what they're saying here. This is actually on the CDC site. So CDC requested some researchers to figure out this hepatitis in children of unknown etiology or sometimes adenovirus based, how much more cases than normal, and what is the increased impact. And it turned out that the number of cases for hepatitis in 2017 versus now were equal or very similar. And similarly, the cases for liver replacement were very similar as well. So they had various theories then that why did this become a big news or that happened. I think it became a global trend. But good news is that they pulled the data together and then they showed that these analyses based on 4 data sources did not indicate a recent increase in hepatitis-associated ED visits or hospitalizations among children 0 to 11 years, liver transplants among children aged 0 to 17, or percentage of specimen-positive adenovirus type 4041 among children aged 0 to 9 years in the US compared with the pre-pandemic levels. So pre-pandemic and recent levels were similar. The only thing their hypothesis was that because we were more sensitized to illnesses, that might have been one of the reasons that more testing occurred. And they're saying that when this news was spreading, more testing was occurring. And so it seemed like cases are increasing, but there is no comparatively different. Now, you trust them, not trust them, that's a totally different thing. But at least from this report, when they compared the data, I read it. And it seems interesting that the data was very similar to previous years. So that is one more piece of news. Then this is the long COVID-19 liver manifestations in children. So this is again the objective here of these researchers was to say, because of COVID, what is the kind of liver issues that are seen? And they saw two main kinds of liver diseases. And that is what they've written here. So they had a case series of 5 patients. In those, 2 infants aged 3 and 5 months, previously healthy, presented with acute liver failure that rapidly progressed to liver transplantation. So this is one mechanism or one illness observed, that a rapid liver failure needing a transplant. The other one was not liver failure needing a transplant, but still needed support and steroids and everything. And what was the illnesses? What was the pathology? So they said 3 children, 2 aged 8 years and 1 aged 13, presented with hepatitis, inflammation of the liver, and cholestasis, stoppage of the bile in the gallbladder line. 2 children had a liver biopsy significant for lymphocytic portal and parenchymal inflammation. So lymphocytes, the WBCs, had entered the liver, the T cells, B cells, they had attacked the liver, caused inflammation there. So lymphocytic portal and parenchymal inflammation. Portal is the venous system or the bile collection system, and parenchyma is the liver's non-functional tissues. Along with the bile duct proliferation, all 3 were started on steroid treatment. Liver enzymes improved and they were weaned successfully from treatment. For all 5 patients, extensive etiology workup for infectious and metabolic etiologies were negative. So they didn't have any infection that would cause this, or they didn't have any metabolic issues that would cause it, like poisons or drugs. So conclusion was, they have seen 2 kinds of outcome in long COVID with liver outcomes. So this was another news I thought I'll share. Now, this is another very interesting paper on dandelions. This is I saw from John Snyder. So thanks to John Snyder. It's just that it was a very long paper and I had to read it. So this paper is actually more recent. It is April 2022. The paper is New Perspectives on the Effect of Dandelion, its Food Products and Other Preparations on the Cardiovascular System and its Disease. If you read through the whole thing, the end of this all is that they say there seems to be benefit. However, there is no conclusive proof from the studies. There are many studies that show it. So let's read the conclusion. Conventional antiplatelet or anticoagulant drug therapy is often associated with side effects. This is cardiovascular system and dandelion. So they say that for the cardiovascular system, normal drugs, allopathic drugs, conventional therapies have side effects as well. So the question was, is dandelion better? And that is the question they were trying to answer. So conventional antiplatelet or anticoagulant drug therapy is often associated with side effects, and in such cases, the use of natural compounds may be a safer alternative. So then they say there are recent studies about dandelion. So I'm just going to read this. Studies have found that the active components of dandelions are able to modulate hemostatic processes, including the signal pathway associated with blood platelets in varied and sometimes opposing ways. 3 key routes. So there are 3 mechanisms they found. 3 key routes by which dandelions and their products may act are the inhibition of reactive oxygen species, so antioxidant, inhibition of arachidonic acid metabolism, just like aspirin, And arachidonic acid is a inflammatory molecule, so that inhibition that also inhibits platelet activity, that would reduce clotting, and reduction in the exposition of receptors on the platelet surface, and also reducing the receptors on the platelet surface receptors get them, the platelets, to become ready and attack, and their attack is really making clots, so connect with each other and fibrin and become clots. So this is what they observed. However, they say although the effect of dandelion and its products on hemostasis have been evaluated, blood clotting, in different in vitro and in vivo studies, the evidence base is insufficient to unequivocally confirm whether dandelion and its products have beneficial effects on hemostasis and cardiovascular diseases, especially in humans. So they say there are studies that think there is mechanisms, but there is no proof yet. So I thought that was interesting. Few more news. Skyfrog is here. Hey, Skyfrog, how are you? Does dandelion wine work? I have never taken wine. So I hope everyone is okay. Just few more pieces. I know it is 1 hour. I know nobody's going to watch this video, but this is important. I have to catch up with these news pieces. So Novavax sees conditional approval for COVID-19 vaccine booster in Australia. So Novavax has gotten a booster approved, again, conditional in Australia, although FDA is still kind of not, it is still delaying. Novavax is, if you see their stock, has been just all over the place. It went down to, I think this morning it was at 32 or 33, went back up to 38. What was it in the morning? 36.28. 36.75 was open, and then it closed at 38.71 or something like that. So that is Novavax. Then this is the update. US FDA advisors weigh Moderna COVID vaccine heart risk for young men. So this is a news everywhere, and I think it is actually not of interesting news. Here is why. The news is that, hey, FDA advisors have said that there is more cardiac inflammatory incidents. But if you actually read this, they said the FDA official told the expert panel that while the data showed a higher risk for Moderna shot, the findings were not consistent across various safety databases and were not statistically significant, meaning they might be due to chance. So when we pick up such news and start running around with it, then they simply say, hey man, you are running around with non-significant data. It means nothing. There are better studies and better data points that show the risks, and this is useless. Okay, next. So this is also the same. Sorry, 2 ones. Then China upset about WHO. So WHO has come out, and I think you've heard this. They've come out and they said, we stand behind, I'm paraphrasing them, for a deeper look into the origin of SARS-CoV-2. And I think WHO is a little annoyed as well that China has been not that open, or has been asking the investigators for cooperating with various conditions. So WHO came out and they said, we think we should do more deeper, or there should be more deeper investigations. That made China really upset. So it was interesting that China then came back and they said, how about US? So China on Friday attacked the theory that the coronavirus pandemic may have originated as a leak from a Chinese lab as a politically motivated lie, after the WHO recommended in strongest terms yet that a deeper probe is needed into whether a lab accident may be to be blamed. And I think it should be done. I always thought that once the pandemic is near the end, these kind of discussions would become important, to go and see how did this whole thing happen. So Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian also rejected accusations that China had not fully cooperated with investigators. If you go to the news, they actually there were conditions for cooperation. So they have not. With the investigators saying it welcomed a science-based probe, but rejected any political manipulation. He also reiterated calls for an investigation into highly suspicious labs such as Fort Detrick and University of North Carolina. So they said, hey, what about your labs? The thing is this, is it the US labs that may be the ones where the virus came from? If it is not the US labs, if it is some wet market or some Chinese lab nearby, then that is a more important area to do this discussion of current pandemic. The US labs can be looked at later as well. But anyways, that's their point. The lab leak theory is totally a lie concocted by anti-China forces for political purposes, which has nothing to do with science, Zhao said at a daily briefing. Really, if it has nothing to do with science, then we would have at least known better where did it come from. We still do not know what was the source. We still do not know what was the intermediate host. We still do not know how so much of a change in a virus. You have seen for 2.5 years the amount of damage this virus can do, the amount or the intensity of damage and the diversity of damage it causes. Coronavirus is used to have this little one paragraph in our immunology books. We would not even care for the coronaviruses. That little paragraph used to say coronavirus is present in our upper respiratory tract. 86% of the people or population has it. And 16-17% of the yearly common cold infections are because of the coronaviruses. Coronaviruses like to live in the more cooler environment. That is why they do not go down in the rest of the body and they do not cause infections in the system. That is what we used to read and just ignore it and forget it. They would never ask us these things in exams. And here we have a coronavirus. First first small outbreak, MERS, then SARS-CoV-1 or SARS-CoV, and here a global pandemic. So where did it come from? That is a totally valid discovery to have. And then why is it meaning if we say that we should look at the labs, then all of a sudden that becomes political. That is also science. Maybe there is a protocol issue there and the protocols were correct. So then we should go figure that out. And if the protocol was incorrect or were incorrect, then we have to update all of our labs worldwide to say, hey guys, the protocols can still break down and this can happen. So everyone changes it. That is science. So we always supported and participated in science-based discussion. So that's what they're saying. That fully reflects China's open position. The WHO stance in a report released Thursday is a sharp reversal of the UN Health Agency's initial assessment of the pandemic's origin. It comes after many critics accused WHO of being too quick to dismiss or underplay a lab leak theory that put Chinese officials on the defensive. And WHO has not played a great role anyways. From the beginning of the pandemic till now, they're more of a distraction than help. But still, they said this. Following a tightly controlled visit to China last year, the WHO concluded that it was extremely unlikely that coronavirus might have spread to humans from a lab in the city of Wuhan. Many scientists suspect the coronavirus jumped from bats to people, possibly via another animal. And we still do not know, after a pandemic of the scale and damage of the scale after 2.5 years. We should know. Anyways, so that, my friends, cool beans, is the end of catching up on the news. So now you were the smart cookies. I was a talker. How did it go? I hope I did not waste your time. I just wanted to make sure that we catch up and then we continue with our daily activities. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, and share. Like it, subscribe, even better, share. You can even now become a member of Dr. Bean on YouTube and support this work. You can support it separately as well. There is a link in the description, and you can buy Dr. Bean plan as well. That's a one-time payment, about 1,000 videos, premium content. This kind of a content, I mean, not all news, but useful content. So Skyfrog says this was great. Thank you. I was so nervous today because on one end, my list of talk topics to talk about was becoming longer and longer. On the other end, I didn't know how to do this. I thought in the beginning of the day, I said, why not I do this every 5 minutes? I go live and do one more talk and just finish them. So here we are. So all the coffees can be bought. The link is in the description. PayPal can be used to support this work. And then, of course, you can buy drbeen.com. Barbara says, thank you. And if I have left some important news, please tell me and I would cover that. And remember, this Thursday, we'll have Paul with us with a very different kind of a topic to discuss. And then this Friday, we'll have Michelle Zimmerman with us once more. She has some interesting communication with NIH for her vaccine injury. And she wanted to, I think that you would enjoy that discussion as well. Not enjoy, it's enlightening. Delise Meir says, what happens if you keep getting COVID? Nothing, your body keeps becoming used to it. Now, there are some people who react with long COVID. So their repeated infection can become intensified as well. So in a normal, healthy person, so I believe I have been exposed multiple times now. The first time I became exposed, it was about a week-long thing, and then I was coughing for a month. And the next time I was exposed, it was one day of lethargy and some joint pains and done. So ideally, our bodies should become used to it, and the virus should become better and more human friendly. So we'll see. We'll see. The newsmakers continue to say that, and they have been saying it for 2 years. Next month, we're going to be in trouble. Next month, we're going to be in trouble. Now, in 3 years, we're going to die. Now, in the new variant is going to come in and just wipe out the effect of all the previous things, and we'll have one more problem. But they always continue to ignore that the virus is continuing to adapt as well towards a positive thing, towards a more humanized coronavirus, just like the other human coronaviruses. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Paul. Yes, Paul will be with us on Thursday. Wafer says, how come we got the gene for COVID in no time, but the same we have not gotten from the adenovirus that is causing the liver issues on kids? Because I think that they have done the sequencing, and it is adenovirus 41 and 42, I believe. Okay. Sue says, what about Justin Bieber? So we can talk about that as well. I have a general learning that if there is a patient who has a condition, then speculating about their condition is not ethical. However, we can do this. We can talk about the disease and the pathology of it and the progression of it and the management of it without saying that this is what Justin Bieber may have. We can talk that he has it, but without speculating for I see so many news medias just speculating for him. Somebody is saying, did you get vaccine? Did you not get vaccine? Did your wife get clot? This is not ethical to do for anyone to discuss them openly. So we can talk about that disease, that pathology. Bambi's here. Bambi, do you know that we did the walk that day? I don't think you were here. Okay, so with this, thank you very much. Once again, if you would like to, there is a look up Eric Clapton. So Like, subscribe, and share. And if you would like, you can support this work by buying Dr. Bean account. It's a one-time payment, not recurring. Or you can buy me a coffee, or you can become a Substack member, or you can use PayPal, or you can become Dr. Bean YouTube member. Thank you very much. I would see you tomorrow. Dan says, background rate of child mortality, all cause versus COVID rate, significant or not? So there is an uptick, and that is in hundreds compared to. Um, so there is a contribution of COVID to it. Number is small, but I had a very close family member, have a very close family member whose 19 years old child died. We still call them child. My older son and her son were almost born with similar age gap, and we have never recovered from that trauma. Because of that, I have this very strange um, difficulty in discussing children's death. So every death is devastating. It's a destruction for the family. Number of deaths were compared to how adults died, the number of deaths you saw 200 or 300 or 400. The question only is comorbidities. Dr. Iron Mom becomes a YouTube member. Thank you very much. So with this, I would see you tomorrow. Bye bye.